Well, hello everyone. Yeah, it's been a couple weeks since the live stream. Sorry it's been so long. A lot of stuff going on in the life, but I'm in a better place now. Things are all coming together. Got things taken care of. Actually, I've been recording some anime reviews and videos to go up on the site soon. Just finished that a few minutes ago. One of the reasons I was a little bit late. Hello, Gage. Hey, Gorilla. Akko, Jay. Good to see you all. And yeah, we're back in the saddle. I took the liberty of checking through the news already, and I gotta admit I didn't see much to really mention. Obviously, a lot of information about occasional licenses. Hey, Game Escape, thank you. Um, so seeing a lot of you know this got licensed, or a voice actor was announced for things. And obviously, it was E3 this past weekend, so lots of E3 video gaming news, of which nothing was, or very little was, specifically anime related, unless it's like, oh, anime related game, which is fine. But the one thing that really sort of really stood out to me was a mention from Jason DeMarco of Adult Swim about the quality of recent Dragon Ball Super episodes. Apparently, some of the fights have gotten slowed down in the show. Like literally, the animation was slowed down. They were displaying fewer frames per second than usual. And he said the problem is that I'm not sure if it's just yeah, all content on television has to go through and pass what's called the Harding test, and the Harding test is what ensures that video does not cause epilepsy. It has the flashing images that like Pokemon had, which triggered those epileptic seizures back in the day. And apparently, those episodes were failing the Harding test, and so they had to be slowed down, like by broadcast standards. But when they were like when folks complained, DeMarco said he went back and looked at it and said, "I think we can slow it down less. So it'll still have to be changed a bit for television, but it won't have to be quite as slowed down as it was." So it's kind of interesting to think that there are these tests going on behind the scenes to make sure that things are safe, but they can sometimes affect the actual end product in a visual way. But it's not even obvious either. So really kind of unusual and interesting there, I thought. Dragon Ball Super airs 11 p.m. on Saturdays on Toonami. So people are paying attention. Apparently, people like Dragon Ball. Who knew? And yeah, people pay attention to this Dragon Ball stuff. I actually have a friend who's a big Dragon Ball fan, and he's watching Dragon Ball Super as it comes out. Like he's keeping up with it, um, which is cool. That you know you got a that kind of a fan, and he likes other stuff too. He's not like Dragon Ball is the only thing I watch. He watches a lot of interesting stuff, but Dragon Ball is one of the things that he's like, yep, I'm there every week watching that thing. Pretty neat. There's very little that I have to watch every week. Used to be, but um, not much these days. I'll keep up with a few things, but um, yeah, Dragon Ball. I don't think I missed out on it growing up. It wasn't out in America when I was growing up. Um, and then when it was available, I was just a little bit too old for it, in the sense that it just it always just seemed a little bit too I don't know, goofy for my taste, and I just wasn't the target audience for it anymore. Um, Guilty pleasure anime. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I believe you should have pleasures and they shouldn't be guilty. With certain adult exceptions, of course, right? But yeah, I don't think I have any real guilty pleasures. I just have pleasures when it comes to anime. Um, but if we talk about anime in terms of stuff that um, I watch and enjoy, people might be surprised that I watch and enjoy. It's a good question for the chat room too, if you guys want to jump in on this. Gosh, it was probably Penny Pony Dash was the big one because that is just a ridiculous screwball comedy, really over the top. and it's just completely ridiculous. And I just enjoyed the heck out of that show because it was, I don't know, I wanted something that was, kind of lol random at the time. Bobo, yeah, fair enough. So yeah, that's probably the big guilty pleasure. And then also, I think in manga, it might be Yotsubato, which again is just a pure pleasure. But it's just like there's nothing much to Yotsubato. It's just a little girl experiencing life, and I really I just devour those when they come out. But I'm not learning a lot about the human condition from that manga. Host Club Oran High School Host Club. Yep, I can see that. Um, yeah, Oran. I watched the first episode of that and it was like, I see what you're doing here. Like I enjoyed it, and I was like, I could watch more of this, but also like, you're following certain tropes very very clearly, which is cool. It's part of the fun of Oran. Mm. But it's funny how many folks got deep into Oran without understanding, without knowing all of the all the stuff around like what a host or hostess club is, right? What they were kind of referencing with that. The fact that there's a lot of Revolutionary Girl Utena kind of references in the show, just sort of visual gags, things along those lines, and they clearly like they're assuming the fans know this and get the gag, but so many folks just enjoyed it purely for the characters and all that. By the way, how's my audio levels? Because I had some issues with my microphone earlier in the week. Actually, I did an upgrade on the CPU on this machine, and for some reason the microphone got weird. So I had to change the levels all around, and redo all the audio. So cool. Sound is good. Glad to hear it. Always a little worrisome when you have to reset all of your audio levels and you're like, what's going on? Seems a little low, J Bug. Okay. I can tweak things around. I'm also sitting a little bit further back, so I may need to punch things up a little bit. I'm just gonna let's try that. So let's try there. So I've just ramped it all the way up to max, and we'll see where that is. I'm still not pegging up to like yellows, and we'll see if that's happy. But yeah, I found it kind of interesting that Super gets a little slowed down. And yeah, E3 has been crazy. Next season, oversaturated with isekai. I don't know that I would call it oversaturated, because I don't know how many people. I mean, people seem to like isekai, so maybe it is correct saturation. Um, how much does the market want? Would be really the question there. You know, people love it, and people were talking about way too many moe series back in the day, but people still watched it. I mean, it was still successful. Um, can't argue with success, right? It'll all depend on how those shows are done and how they're handled. One of my favorite shows of the past few years is Grimgar, which was definitely an isekai series, but it was a grounded isekai series, right? It was a very it was about characters who they have to deal with this is our only change of clothes and we really want to make money so we can have more than one change of clothes, things like that. No, I don't believe isekai will eventually die out, just like moe has not died out. I don't very few genres ever really die out. They just they peak and then they become less popular, and we see few of them. You want oversaturation? Look at Mecha in the 1980s. Like every other anime series was a Mecha series back then, and that's now gone through its peak, and now we get Mecha series every so often. I'd like to see a few more Mecha series than there. But no, I think isekai is going to be one of those things. And we've had isekai for decades, right? El Hazard is isekai. No, I think it's always going to be around. I do think it's a fad in the sense of a show where the gimmick is purely current human goes to alternate world. I think that's going to die out, and people are going to need to find twists on that, much like reincarnated as a slime, right? Where there's a twist there. And that's the standard thing, right? Where something comes out, becomes hugely popular, and then folks just kind of do that, or just like that over and over and over again with no real, innovation. And then you start seeing, okay, a few folks innovate, few folks do different things with that. Those become popular, and then the generic stuff kind of dies away, or dies back. Doesn't completely die out, and that'll go. Let's see here. So the term moe, Girl on Monsoon, for what it's worth, that has evolved over time. So different people use moe to mean different things, and the term has meant different things. So Japanese people have a different definition for moe than we do, for example. I generally refer to moe as a an appreciation for an anime character that crosses the line into protectiveness. The same way you would protect your girlfriend or your boyfriend. That is the emotion that moe is trying to evoke in a character. So a moe character is one where that you want to protect and make feel good, right, so to speak. And you do that by having very vulnerable characters who have giant eyes, giant doe eyes, stuff along those lines, and it just kind of became a thing. But again, it depends on different people. Is modern day anime producing classics? Yes, but we can't tell what those are, right? It's very hard to tell at any given time what is what today is just popular and what's a classic and what will last. Humans are very difficult at predicting the future. We're very bad at predicting the future. But we've gotten stuff like Sword Art Online, I think, is a classic, right? It will go down as a classic. I would love to see Dororo go down as a classic, frankly. Goblin Slayer, probably not. Goblin Slayer, it looks like, was basically a shocker of a first episode. But do the most popular shows have an easier time of ending up as classics? Definitely. Yep. Very true. But it depends. Like Nausicaa was not hugely popular outside of the hardcore otaku market, but they kind of hung on. Same thing with Cagliostro. A lot of these things were sleeper hits, but then built and built and built and built. Same thing actually with Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane was a sleeper hit. It was not hugely successful when it came out. People went to see it and they regarded it as a fine film, but it did not win best film that year, the Oscars. But its reputation continued to grow over time. Time of Eve, I think, will always become a classic. Maybe a cult classic, unfortunately. Yeah, exactly. Gundam 0079 took a while to find its popularity. I think Sword Art Online has become. I think Fate is definitely a classic. It will be seen as a classic, just because it now has that following and folks have invested enough in it. I don't know, but it's hard to tell. Like Oremo, I can't believe my little sister was this cute, was massive when it came out. What, 7 years ago, 8 years ago? When was Oremo? And I would have said at that point that Oremo would become a classic, but it seems to have kind of passed down. 2010, so yeah, about 9 years ago. ReZero, yeah, ReZero definitely folks keep talking about over and over and over again. Redline, again, maybe a cult classic for Redline. I don't know. I hope it becomes a classic. But it does seem to keep coming up over and over, which is awesome. So yes, I think we're getting classics. It's just that it's hard to tell at the time, and because the classics come along at a very slow rate. In 1978, there weren't 20 classics the same season, right? So we have to recognize there's a time scale to that, and they kind of bubble up to the surface over time. So who knows? Yeah, exactly. Just because it's hated on doesn't mean it's not a classic. Who knows? The shift in genre generation. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, we're currently in an isekai boom, which kind of surprises me. So we got basically, we got experimental stuff in the 90s. So the 90s was sort of a space fantasy, throw lots of different genres together. We were talking about this on Discord, AS in particular, and I were talking about how the 90s had all of these weird, settings where you'd have, furries in space with, battleships and, naked women and galactic ley lines and all sorts of wackiness. That was just kind of the thing you did in the 90s. And then in the 2000s, we saw Moe, and through to the like mid 2000 or early 2010s, and now we're seeing the isekai boom. Seems to be the new trend. And I gotta say, it's been fun watching anime over the past 20 years and watching all of the, trends come in and people screaming and yelling that this is the end of the world. When I was getting in the mid 90s, it was, we didn't have as good of a sense of trends then. So we didn't know, what was a trend at that point. But Pokemon was probably the first big controversy that I was aware of. And Pokemon was going to destroy anime, and sure enough, it didn't. And then Moe, and now Isekai. What I'm hoping is that we're going to get out of Isekai our Alhazard, our Ghost in the Shell, whatever, our series that kind of takes that genre and elevates it. That really does something interesting and goes in a direction that other folks can mimic in an interesting way. I haven't seen ReZero, so I can't comment, but I think that genre is ripe for exploration. I remember there was an Isekai series from quite a few years ago. It wasn't Gate, but it's the same basic premise as Gate, where the main character goes to a fantasy world, but he is a representative of the Japanese government, in particular anime and manga, where he's trying to promote anime and manga to these fantasy races, and it's very classic kind of modern moe characters and such, but it presents this medieval fantasy world pretty seriously. There's racism, and there's abuse of servants and things along those lines. And there's a lowly princess that he's involved with, and people try to kill her, because she's a monarch. So it was kind of interesting seeing that thing where it's okay, yeah, you jump to this other world, but it's not just adventure with cute girls. No, it's politics. It's all the difficult things of a real world. I think that'll be really interesting to see, without losing the fun of an isekai. But who knows? Mm-hmm. Yeah, genres definitely shift. So I'd say 80s mecha, 90s space fantasy, 2000s moe. And of course, the burst of the bubble economy kind of prolonged that moe boom for a long time, because that was what was keeping the industry afloat. And also just, because the whole economy was in this sort of weird state, nobody wanted to innovate, nobody wanted to rock the boat. So that tended to prolong, it tends to keep things in stasis for a little bit longer. So we got kind of a 5-year prolongation of that. But again, it depends on who you ask. I mean, if you ask Ano in the mid 90s, he probably would have told you that mecha was still a giant thriving genre. Because depending on how you look at it, there was a lot of mecha in the early 90s and the mid to late 90s. The rate had certainly slowed somewhat, but there's a lot of it out there. So interesting kind of how you divide things and how you look at things. It's one of the neat things is you can kind of find multiple different angles to look at stuff. Someone was asking me at one of my panels about the idea of fans growing up, the idea that the kids who watched anime in the 60s and 70s, the kids who watched kids anime in the 60s, then by the 70s they wanted something more serious, and so you got the Yamatos and the Galaxy Expresses and the Gundams, and I could see that. But then, if that was true, then we would have gotten, Akira in 1982, right? But we didn't, and so it's not that simple, right? Partly because anime has always been a youthful genre, not necessarily kiddie, but there's very little anime aimed at like a middle age audience, for example. You think about anime that is really about middle aged people, pretty small slice of there. Don't know. Hmm. Oh, I need to grab something from the other room. I will be back in about 3 seconds. Talk amongst yourselves. And then where's the other thing, actually? I had something here to show you guys. I can put it in the other room. 1 second. There it is. So I got a sneak peek for you all of a video that'll be coming to the channel here pretty soon. But before that, you guys get to see everything going on here. I'm actually going to take some aspirin because I've got a headache coming on, and I don't want to slow down the night. I don't want to have to, stop here prematurely. Akko, what do you mean? There's Haros in Gundam Build, right? Haro's like the mascot of the Gundam Build thing, right? Look at Grand Quest War might become a classic. Yeah, it could be. So, what are these? Can you tell me what these are? Give you guys a minute. I'm on like a 20-second delay on the chat room. Here are the backs. There's like a plastic sleeve on this one, so it's a little hard to read. So what do you think these are? Imported anime? No. I don't know why you think Lane is fan hatred. Don't know a lot of folks who like stuff. This is not the most hated Gundam, by the way. These are bootlegs. These are both bootleg anime box sets. And you might not be able to tell. I mean, Gundam Seed Destiny is a little more obvious. That font seems a little weird. And you get this stuff in the back. Yeah, I don't know anyone who hates Lane. But you'll notice there are absolutely no company logos on the back. Right? A little bit of stuff. They actually do throw a copyright message in this. But like it has spelling and capitalization errors. Listen to this. The copyright proprietor has licensed the film, including its soundtrack, comprised in DVD video disc for home only. All other rights are reserved. The definition of home use, excluding the use of this DVD video disc at locations such as clubs, coaches, hospital, hotels, oil rigs, prisons and schools. Any unauthorized copying, editing, exhibition, renting, exchanging, hiring, lending, public performance. Hiring, lending, public performance, diffusion, and or broadcast of this DVD, video disc, or any part thereof is strictly prohibited, and any such action establishes liability for civil action and may give rise to criminal prosecution. Prosecution, not prostitution. Very different thing. But yeah, oil rigs. So yeah, kind of weird. And then inside you have your stuff in pretty good quality. I mean, I'm not complaining about that. And then you open it up, but also the image of Shin in there is kind of weirdly squashed. Like the art in there is not very well handled. Yeah, definitely a bootleg. And then you can't watch it inside a Gundam. I know, it's God. The Lane one is really slick. So you get this, you get that. The giveaway is, again, there's none of that, DVD type or any of that stuff in the bottom. Just a generic, like clip art logo. And if you search FX Anime, you'll find, yeah, there's pirates. But then you open it up in the inside, very classy thing there. I do think it's kind of cool, actually, that they mirror it. Mirror writing, that is kind of interesting. And then open it all the way up and you get that. So very pretty. Very nicely done. But I came across this at a used bookstore here recently. And it was like, I just got to pick these up. Like $20 each. And like I said, I've got a video coming up about them. Yeah, no, I totally hear it there. Zheng Ying Li, I'm probably totally destroying that. And yeah, I've certainly bought bootlegs and not realized what they were. I've also bought bootlegs knowing what they were. I've been like, well, I can't get this any other way, so I'm going to get the bootleg. Exactly. Well, no, that's the problem, Jay, is that, prisons are home use. So you can't watch inside a prison. Very sad. Let's see here. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. Somebody actually, put this in. And here's the thing: they probably got money for it. Like whoever sold it to the used bookstore probably got some cash for it. So, oh well. But at least it's now out of the, out of circulation, and all that kind of stuff. Gage asked what I thought about the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer. One of the few video games I actually can talk about. Very intrigued for Breath of the Wild 2. I have thoughts about what's going on there. I agree with the fan theory that it is implying that we will play as Link and Zelda. I think what it's basically suggesting is that Link gets separated from Zelda. Zelda has to go find Link, so you play as Zelda, and then probably later in the game, you join up and you can play as either one, kind of bounce back and forth, sort of a co-op situation. Co-op Zelda would be fantastic. There was an interview with a director who said that they are reusing Hyrule, the map of Hyrule, which will speed up development, which is pretty cool. I also have a theory that we might see that game sooner than we think. Because I suspect that the plan, I know this is not anime, but pardon my indulgence for a moment. I think the intended cadence for the Switch was Zelda, Mario, Metroid. And so they did, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, and then Metroid kept getting delayed and pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And now we know it's been very badly delayed. And so now like, okay, here's the thing. I'm sure they did not stop working on Zelda, right? I'm sure they've been working on a Zelda game since not long after the DLC ended. And so I think they're basically like, okay, this thing we're working on is actually a thing that's happening. And they may be fairly far along with that game. So I'm really hoping that as a game we see in, say, early 2020, because they made making a lot of progress on the back end, but expecting to have a Metroid Prime 4 to sort of tide the fans over until that's done. But now they may have been pushed forward a little bit. A genre I'd like to see get more love, Mecha. I'd love to see more serious mecha, more the grounded 8th MS team style mecha, where it's not the mecha we get now tends to be Darling in the Franxx, very Super Robot style. So I'd love to see more that grounded, serious mecha stuff. Real soldiers in a real combat environment is my jam, which is ironic considering that I have not watched Iron Blooded Orphans yet. Not finished it, I should say. I watched some of it, but it hasn't quite gone there. Super Robots died off again. Darling in the Franxx. I mean, Gurren Lagann. I mean, what was the mecha from this past season from Trigger? Yeah, you're right, Jay. Horror manga is huge and apparently hugely popular, but they don't get adapted into anime much. And I don't know quite why. I suspect because horror is. It feels like horror doesn't have as big of a following in Japan as it does here. So it's not as commercial, not as marketable as it is over here. Obviously, you get things like The Ring, and you get some live action horror stuff like that. But that feels like it's very rare for those things to really hit well. So I suspect we just don't get much horror anime. Yeah. Yeah, I will one of these days get to the rest of Gundam, but I've actually been trying to cut down on some of my responsibilities over the past few weeks. So that's relaxing. Well, you're in luck, Mozone. That is without the space of the or the Moe aliens. That's Gun Parade March, pretty much. If you want high school in space and Moe aliens, that would definitely be The Girl Who Leapt Through Space. So check that one out. And that is basically every anime trope all happening at the same time. I do love that show. And I gotta finish it one of these days. I got like 2/3 of the way through, and then it got surprisingly dark. And I was like, I don't want my absurd parody of everything to suddenly get like dark and serious and have like some really disturbing implications in its setting and world. Yeah, Jay. Darling in the Franxx and that other recent mega series are both by Trigger, I believe. So let's see. Um, so I'm gonna look for. Um, is there like a good big list of mecha series, like chronologically, by year maybe? There's a mecha anime and manga Wikipedia article. Yeah, and it's nothing. Um, Very brief. And obviously, he's not going to cover everything. Various listicles. List of mecha anime? Is that going to be chronological? No, it's just a list. Dang it. So let's see here. See what we get. So in 2018, we get Darling in the Franxx, Shinkansen Henkei Robo Shinkalion, which is Super Robot. We get Gundam Narrative, and we got Mazinger Z Infinity. So 3 of the 4 are Super Robot. 2017, we got Twilight Axis, which is the only one they list. Obviously, there's more than this, but going by that. 2016, we got Macross Delta. Kuromikuro, which is, I believe, Super Robot. Can't tell. Might be more grounded. That might be more real. And then Regalia, the Three Sacred Stars, which looks pretty super. Code Geass, which is definitely a little more Super Robot. 2015, Aquarion, Symphogear GX, Gundam the Origin. So sort of split there. Wait. Comet Lucifer. That definitely looks Super Robot. So yeah, I'm definitely seeing more Super Robot than real. Well, I'm sorry to say this, Akko, but if you want anime to experiment more, you're several decades too late. And a lot of mecha in the 90s, definitely. Until Evangelion kind of killed them all, sadly. And that's a little unfair, but definitely when Evangelion came out, it felt like the end of an era. It felt like, oh, now we have to do serious, commentary kind of mecha anime series. This is the apotheosis of mecha, and so everything that has been said, that can be said, has been said by Evangelion, which not true, but yeah, unfortunately, Evangelion had that kind of impact, a second impact, one might say. Transforming bullet train robot Shinkalion. That's hilarious. Oh, made with the Association of Japan Railways Group. So there we go. Who is, wow, main character is a rail fan who discovers his father's part of a secret organization which combats mysterious beings called Shinkalions using bullet trains to turn into giant robots. There we go. Because anime. I love it. Don't like Eva? Fair enough. I didn't like it either for the longest time. And I don't know that I like it. I respect it now. I understand what Evangelion was trying to do, and I can see the where it is. I can see the quality in it. But yeah, you do not have to like Eva. It is a very specific thing. But with the rowdy '90s mecha like Mashing Ayuden, Eldoran, and Brave series, nice. Mm. I didn't grow up with much of that stuff. I grew up with Voltron. Robotech was on the air, but I didn't watch it because it seemed too grown up for me. So I got that, and then I got just sort of random '80s stuff that had shown up on American television, and it was just so sporadic. This is the era of Transformers. So we really got more of the transforming. I forget what you call it, but basically the intelligent giant robot genre. Yeah, Warren Gemini is definitely mecha. An interesting take on mecha. Definitely an informed take on mecha there. Ah, Big Bad Beetleborgs. Yep. Remember when that came out over here? Boy, Power Rangers was a juggernaut. All right. I think then that will do it for us for tonight. Been chugging along for about 45 minutes, and that should do my thing. Yeah, Power Rangers definitely still is the henshin live action stuff. So thank you all, as always, very much for joining me. This is a great conversation, as always. Let me just double check the calendar and see what's coming up for me. Yep, so we should be able to continue this next week. Then I've probably have to take off the following week for a vacation trip, but we should be back on afterwards, and it should be fun. So thank you all, as always. Hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you next week. Take care. See you. Bye. Watch more anime.